Hey everyone, it's Jana from the Love Stitch. In today's video, I will talk about a topic very dear to my heart, namely activewear fabrics, which can be kind of overwhelming. What to pick, how to find them, and how do I know that I actually use the right fabric for the right type of activities? All that and more is what I'm going to talk about in today's video. And first, a little bit of a background. I don't just make YouTube videos, also write sewing books. And one of the books I've made is called Sewing Activewear. And this video is actually based on a chapter in my book, which is about how to pick activewear fabrics. So if you want to learn even more, I highly recommend you get my book. But now on to today's topic. So activewear fabrics, they can mean a lot of different things, but you usually are looking for some type of properties. For instance, to be moisture wicking, quick drying, water resistant, or at least shower proof, or also helps with stopping the wind from getting through. So those are some of the properties you might look for when you're sewing activewear garments. But of course, not all fabrics will have all these properties. It all depends on the weather you're exercising in, and of course what type of activities you're doing. But in today's video, I will talk in broad strokes about the different type of activewear fabrics that you might be considering when making your own activewear. So let's start talking about 4-way moisture wicking stretch fabric. Those that you use for leggings, tops, bike shorts, all that good stuff. The thing is, when you're working with this fabric is, of course, you need to make sure it is actually moisture wicking. Now, hopefully, the vendor that you're buying your fabric from is actually able to tell if this is a moisture wicking fabric, because sometimes it will feel like you're working out in a plastic bag. So you definitely need to make sure that it's actually labeled as a moisture wicking fabric. If you want to learn even more about how to know this, you can check out the blog post I did over at my website, theloststitch.com. Where I have more information for different fabric vendors specializing in selling activewear fabrics on these things, so you can definitely learn more about that over there. But the biggest thing that you need to consider, apart from the moisture wicking thing, is that it also needs to have the right weight for the type of products you want to do. For instance, if you're doing a pair of leggings, you definitely need to go more heavyweight than, for instance, if you're sewing a lightweight top. This is probably one of the mistakes that I think many of us do when we're starting out sewing activewear, is that we don't really understand the differences. So for instance, if you're doing a pair of leggings in a very thin fabric, bulges will show through. You will not really get the sort of nice compression look that you're after. And the opposite, if you're working with a very heavy fabric for a top, it will feel very constricting and not really like a nice overall sensation. It all depends if it's tight fitting or loose fitting. If it's loose fitting, you can have a little bit lighter fabric, for instance. But if it's tight fitting, you might want to have a little bit of a heavy fabric. But again, those are rough ballparks. So there are lots of different versions of this type of stretchy fabric out there. The one I'm holding right now is something that I ordered from Spoonflower. Spoonflower is a company specializing in custom prints, and this is their sports lycra. It's a heavy weight. This is actually printed on white. The good thing about that is it provides really beautiful colors. The drawback is, of course, that when it's stretched out, you will get slightly white sheen. If you notice a lot of ready-to-wear lycra fabrics now, they will actually have been printed on white, just because it's so popular right now to have those big bold patterns. So this is definitely an option you could explore. These ones, it's a pair of copper leggings that I did using them. It has held up really well. I can definitely recommend looking into the Spoonflower Sports Lycra. Another version of this 4-way stretchy fabric is Supplex, which is very common, and I think you can pretty easily find these to buy on the yard. So the black one here is Supplex. It has a very soft surface. It almost feels like cotton. When I showed the Spoonflower, it has a more like shiny surface. This one is so soft you could actually almost be tricked to think that it's done by a cellulose or cotton-based material, but it's not. But the wonderful thing about Supplex is, of course, that it's so soft to wear. So it's big, very, very popular among many people because of the nice feeling of it. So I'm personally a big fan of using Supplex as well. Again, make sure that you pick a heavyweight, because Supplex is so soft. So if you're working with a very soft Supplex on a pair of leggings, it might feel, a little bit too soft. You kind of want, a bit of a shaping going on when you're working with leggings. So definitely check that out. And as for tops, yes, you should definitely go with a more lightweight fabric. This one is the brand name Meryl. It's very similar to Supplex in the way that it's also very, very soft and really like drapey and beautiful. This top is actually has inserts using another material is very common for activewear, which is sport mesh. This is a really good way of adding some more ventilation when you're making garments. So I can highly recommend you start experiment with placing mesh panels where you see them fit. So for instance, here you can see I've used all the way in the back as well. That works really well. Another type of mesh that you can add to activewear is this, which is called power mesh. It's actually a very high content of lycra and has really good stretch. So this is a nice way of adding it. If you look to a lot of ready-to-wear activewear, they would usually employ some type of mesh details in a lot of them. So absolutely look into the power mesh as well. And the third mesh option is something called power net, which is more firm, which I'm very fond of using for stabilizing waistbands on leggings, for instance. But there are also lots of other uses for that as well. They are perfect for stabilizing a sports bra, for instance. So these are probably the three most common meshes for activewear: sports mesh, power mesh, and power net. Now, not all polyester wicking fabrics, jersey fabrics, need to stretch. For instance, I have here a top that I've made of a material that is pretty common if you look into ready-to-wear activewear, and that is a knit that's a bit more stable. It's usually like a base layer material, and this actually has small grids, and these grids actually transport moisture, which makes them very popular for like colder base layer materials. So this is another option. You have to be mindful, of course, if you are sewing activewear and you're using a pattern that is made for a very stretchy fabric and you want to use one of these fabrics instead, you definitely need to perhaps consider picking another pattern or grade up a little bit, because for instance this fabric has much less stretch than the lycra fabric. Actually, sometimes the lycra fabrics can stretch up to 100% of their original width, but this one I would say perhaps also have like 30% stretch. So that's a massive difference, and definitely should influence what type of pattern you're choosing when you're sewing with these type of knits. Another popular material when making activewear is of course fleece. Now this is a jacket that I've made out of a stretch fleece, which means that it has some lycra content, does make it really nice for close fitting activewear. There are so many different fleece versions out there. Some are really heavy, some are very light. So it all depends on what type of use you're going. For instance, you can get stretch fleece and turn them into a nice warm weather pair of leggings. You can use much lighter fleece as of like a mid-layer fabric, for instance. So there are lots of different ways of using fleece, and in my book Sewing Activewear I talk more about the different type of fleece, but you can also go online and see lots of different ways that you can use fleece. But definitely a very popular type of fabric for making activewear. And the benefit of the fleece obviously is that it's really good at keeping warm, but it also transports moisture and it's quick drying, so it doesn't really bog you down. Now I know some of you really like to work with natural fibers as well, and that can be a bit of a struggle when it comes to sewing activewear. For instance, fleece is not a really good material when it's done from polyester. It pills, which actually affects the waterways, and it comes with a lot of other issues as well. So a lot of people are looking for substitutes, and I'm personally very fond for warm weather workouts to use wool. So for instance, this is a top that I've made using 100% rib knit wool. These are actually cotton ribbing for the upper part, but wool works really well also because it transports moisturize. It doesn't have to be super warm if you're using those thin, lightweight wool knits. I think the main drawback when working with the wool really is that once it gets wet, it gets really wet compared to say fleece, which is actually much more quick drying in that sense. So that's definitely, I think, the con of using wool. But if you want to be more like sustainable conscious, I definitely think the wool is an option you could consider. I know also you can get like wool fleece these days, and there are some other options as well when it comes to fleece. And I've also seen that some ready-to-wear manufacturers also now actually starting to create like traditional activewear but using wool instead of polyester. As I said, there are lots of different fleece available, and one is actually like a combination of two things, which is soft shell. Now soft shell has an outer coating, a membrane, which is actually water repellent. It's not waterproof, but it definitely repels water up to a certain degree, and inside there is a layer of good old fleece. And I'm very fond of using soft shell because I like how it's a combination of both warmth and wind resistance, and also has some water repelling effect. So this is jacket I made for soft shell. It actually has some nice stretch in it, so it's pretty figure fitting. Now another type of fabric that you might be interested in when it comes to making your own activewear is those water repellent, wind resistant fabrics that usually have like a membrane coating. You probably have heard of them. They usually call something like Gore-Tex or similar brand names. But basically this type of fabric you use for your outer layer when exercising in more strenuous weather. They're really, really great and actually become more and more available for us home sewers to get your hands on. But the big thing that you need to remember when working with those fabric is the importance of sealing the seams, because that is the weak link when you're making your own garments. You definitely need to seal the seams, otherwise the water will just sip through the seams and you won't really get any waterproof effect. But you can use different methods. One common is to seal the seams using tape, and another method is to use liquid seam sealer. That's another thing I recommend. It all depends a little bit on the type of materials you're doing, the design you're doing, this type of seams you're sealing, but both these are really good opportunities to seal the seams. So definitely ways of doing this even if you're making your own activewear. Now one of the biggest struggles when it comes to sewing activewear is actually finding good fabric. But the good news is that on my website, thelaststitch.com, I've actually compiled a list of vendors around the world that are specializing in selling different kind of activewear fabric. So link of course will be in the description section, so you can head over there and check that out as well. And of course I also have a Facebook group called Sewing Activewear, and my book Sewing Activewear, which I highly recommend. It talks a lot about different type of fabrics, more than I've mentioned in this video, and of course how to turn those fabrics into fabulous activewear. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found the information useful. I love making activewear. It definitely motivates me to exercise more as well, and there's always so many new techniques to learn. So I definitely hope that you will have just a satisfying experience making your own activewear. Thank you so much for watching this video. Stay safe and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!